The New Labour era became famous, bizarrely in some ways, for this Labour spin. And as it was drawing to a close, I thought, I think this is going to carry on somehow. And I'll tell you why I thought that. I was invited by David Cameron to go on this train journey with him to Norwich. But something very weird happened to me with David Cameron. I never got invited to Chequers or anything like that. But I was always invited to join him on a train to Norwich. It happened 3 times. I've never understood why, but there must have been some sort of grid where my name came up next to Norwich somehow. But anyway, on one of these trips, it was about 18 months before the general election, I was on this train with him to Norwich. And he got a call on his mobile phone. And he was had been fairly tired and looked kind of, as if this was all a bit too much. And this phone call said, "What?" It was from his office. "Oh, that is fantastic. Really? Oh, I'm so happy. Oh, let the sun shine. That's marvelous, marvelous, marvelous. Thank you so much, George, for telling me that. I'm so thrilled." And he put the phone down. He said to his press woman who was with her, "Get some wine. We're all going to have a drink. This is absolutely fantastic." I thought, what the heck's going on here? Has he heard that Samantha is pregnant? Or, I don't know, that the polls now give him a 30-point lead? And so he said, "Well, what are we celebrating?" He said, "I've just heard Simon Heffer's been sacked from the Daily Telegraph." And he was on a complete euphoric high. And I thought, well, here we go. And of course, that preoccupation is a very, very common theme in politics. Gordon Brown's testimony to the Leveson inquiry got a lot of sort of attention for his claims about briefings and that he didn't know that briefings went on. But the thing that really surprised me was when he said at one point that he wasn't particularly interested in the media or the newspapers. One of his advisors told me that Gordon used to get up at 5 in the morning, read all the newspapers, and was therefore totally miserable by 5:30 in the morning. And he once, when he was Prime Minister, he switched from having this office, like Tony Blair had an office with his famous sofa and things. He got this completely open-planned office with big screens everywhere, with rolling news. It was sort of utterly conducive to neurosis and paranoia. It was a very big mistake. He should never have done it. And I'm told that on one occasion, he had brought Peter Mandelson back by this point. And they were all in this mad, open-planned office, Sky News there, News 24 there, 25,000 newspapers, blogs over there. And he was bashing away at something. It was only about 7 o'clock in the morning. And suddenly Peter Mandelson appeared from nowhere. Peter Mandelson had this knack of appearing just from nowhere. He didn't open doors or anything. You would just look up and there he was. It alarmed several cabinet ministers where they just thought they were getting on with their lives. And up they looked and there was Peter Mandelson. Anyway, there he was, bashing away at something. And Gordon suddenly noticed Peter had appeared from nowhere. "Oh, hello, morning, everybody." He hadn't opened any doors, just appeared. And Gordon said to Peter, "Peter, have you seen what's on page 14 of the FT today? It's a disaster, it's a disaster." "What's on page 14, Gordon?" "It's a complete bloody disaster." He said, "What is it?" Gordon said, "They've leaked the news, someone's leaked the news of my new press officer. Someone's leaked the news." "Leaked, Gordon?" "Yeah, someone, look, it's there, page 14. And Peter sort of had a look at this thing. He said, "Gordon, that news didn't leak." He said, "What do you mean didn't leak?" "There it is, on page 14 of the FT. He said, "No, it didn't leak, it seeped." And the news seeped out, Gordon. You can relax. "What do you mean seeped? What do you mean seeped?" And of course he was obsessed, as Tony Blair was obsessed with the media, as virtually every Prime Minister has been. My favourite story, and it comes from another diary. We're going to be talking a lot about diaries this evening. Tony Benn's diary is a classic. He chronicled everything on a day-by-day basis, rather like Alistair, actually, late in the evening, in a slightly different way. He used a tape recorder to record everything. And there's a wonderful vignette of a cabinet meeting in about 1975, maybe 1976, the end of the sort of Wilson era. Wilson now completely paranoid about everything. Especially his own cabinet, with good cause, actually. Wilson called this cabinet meeting, and Ben says, "Harold was absolutely strict with us. He said, if there are any more leaks to the media, the relevant cabinet minister will be sacked on the spot. Harold said he's had enough of leaks, they are utterly damaging, and they must stop now or else." Anyway, the Cabinet took a break at midday, and I went out and bought the first edition of the Evening Standard with a cup of tea. And the front page story was, Wilson warns Cabinet over leaks. Harold had leaked the fact that, anyway, you can get the rest. Talking of diaries, I think they are a fantastically rich historic documents. There's a kind of myth about diaries that they are unreliable evidence, that the writers are so obsessed with getting their own story out that it's utterly distorting of history. I don't think so at all. I think it takes you straight to the heart of events. And actually, one of the cliches about the diarists of that era, the 1970s, is that if you took one day and read each of the three diaries, Ben, Barbara Castle, who was the other one? Crossman, Richard Crossman. They would all be totally different. It's not true, actually. They record the same events, but obviously and openly from their perspective. And what we've got here with Alastair Campbell's diaries, and the latest volume covers an extraordinary range of things. Iraq, Gordon Brown, relations with the media, is an utterly absorbing and rich account right at the heart of government. And it raises many, many interesting questions. And while I was reading this volume, I've read all the volumes, I was wondering what I thought was different from reading these diaries to those of the cabinet ministers who wrote in the 70s. And funnily enough, as I was out running this morning, talking with my friend David Aronovich, who's also read this volume, I think we cracked it. And that's what I'm going to ask Alastair Campbell first, as we welcome him for this special event. Ladies and gentlemen, Alastair Campbell.